Hello and happy New Year's Eve. Welcome to this Automation Academy Mastering the Machine webinar for the 30th of December 2023. This is a general discussion on what I'm up to in the Automation Academy and my workshops coming up January the 8th through the 19th, 2024. Hope you enjoy it. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to webinar number 68 of the Automation Academy's Mastering the Machine. This episode will be the New Year's Eve presentation. It is December 30th, end of the year. This is a time that a lot of times people like to make plans for the next year and review the previous year. And so that's what I thought I would do today. I don't have any specific subject except for talking about some of the things that I'm working on. And if anybody wants to chime in and talk about their projects and things they're doing, I would love to hear about them. So what is the Automation Academy? The Automation Academy is a membership website that I have had for about 3 years now. Started it right after a tornado destroyed my facility, and then COVID hit about 2 weeks later. So I had to find some other things to do besides traveling around the country and teaching PLC and automation classes. So I started an online presence, and it has kind of grown, put lots of videos on it, lots of written materials, including a lot of parts of my books extracted. Those are in the library. And then there are lots of videos in the education center, mostly on Allen Bradley, Siemens, and a little bit on Omron. Doing some videos on Beckhoff right now, but don't have a lot on there yet. Lots of things on systems integration and sensors and machine vision and pneumatics and things like that. So if you're interested in that, you can find more information at automationllc.com or connect to the Automation Primer, where there's also a lot of good information about this platform. So today's topic, again, nothing very specific. I do want to update everybody on the last webinar. I showed this big empty room. This was, best I can tell, an old garage that when I bought this old house, someone remodeled the garage and carpeted it. And I have no idea why there's a fireplace at one end of this garage. But anyway, it really, that's what it seemed to be. And then they put a drop ceiling at it. As you can see, it's only about 7 feet high. And before that, I think it was just a big open bay. But as you can see here, I had all the floor epoxied and it was kind of empty, of course, December 9th. And since then, I have moved a lot of things from my house to this empty garage. And so it's kind of a workshop. You can see there, lower left there is a mill in the corner. That's a little, I think it's called the Little Machine Shop. And it's been a very handy mill for me. I make little trainers and things like that. So I went ahead and stuck that here. It was real heavy, so I had a friend of mine help me move it and help arrange this little shop. This little workbench that you can see on dollies. So there's 2 tool chests. One is mine from home, and then there's this workbench. And this workbench, I put it on dollies for 2 reasons. 1, I can move it around, and 2, it made it tall enough so that I could stand up and use it. So I can always take it off of the dollies and set it down on the floor and do projects on it that way. Or if shorter people show up, which I have no idea. 2 of the people that are showing up to my workshop this month, I have no idea how tall they are. I do know that there is one guy who's probably only about 5'5" showing up from Miami. So I may have to lower it for him. In the right-hand side here, you can see my new 3D printer. And I have a little bit more on that subject here on the next slide. This is a Bamboo Carbon X1, and Bamboo has kind of created a revolution in 3D printing in that it really doesn't take a lot of setup. You don't have to build it yourself like a Prusa 3D printer. All you have to do is, basically take it out of the box, remove the screws, and turn it on. So kind of a neat setup there. What are you 3D printing? I see Vlad here put a chat. I am 3D printing mostly trainer parts. So that's kind of my goal with this. As I build these little conveyor trainers and things, I'll be showing some pictures on the next couple pages of some things that I'm working on. I've only had this thing for about, I guess, 2 weeks, and it's only been operating for about 1 week. So you can see here, this was pretty empty December 9th. This arrived, I want to say 10 days ago, maybe, and I kind of unboxed it and set it up. This little table that it's on is also from my garage, so we had to move that. A little bit more on the 3D printer. So this is the third thing that I printed. The third thing that I printed, and it's called a poop chute. Kind of a rank term for this. But anyway, the poop chute removes the debris from the back of the printer, which normally would just fall on the floor. There is a hole in the back of the printer. And so when the nozzle ejects, filament and things like that, it needs to get rid of stuff. It just drops it down a little chute at the back. And so you really need something to catch it. And there's a whole bunch of models of this. But anyway, I printed this. This is the third thing that I had to print. And there's a couple results here. This thing there were two mistakes that I made in this process. So the other two things that I printed what's called a benchy first. A benchy is like it's a boat. And it kind of just tests things out, and all kinds of 3D printers use that benchy as a test print. So Prusa, Creality, a lot of those people will use that little boat to test whether it can handle overhangs and things like that, and does fills right. But anyway, so I printed that. That worked well. I actually gave it to my wife, and she hung it on the Christmas tree, so it made a good ornament. Then the second thing that I printed was a small scraper, which this little bed that you see on the bottom comes off. It's magnetic. And one of the things that you have to do with this bed is you're supposed to cover it with glue. And so this thing down at the bottom that you see, it looks like just a little platform with a little round thing in the middle of it. That is the result of when I forgot to put the glue on this plate. So this was my third print, and I'd already made an immediate mistake. I forgot to put the glue on the plate. And what happened was, as it printed, it got about this far, and I noticed the end of the little platform, which is the bottom of the poop chute there that you can see in this upper right picture. It's the very bottom part of it, and it had already printed it, but it was starting to come up off the surface. And since this took about 5.5 hours to print this thing, I really didn't want to waste time. And so I stopped the print and I peeled it up, and this little round thing in the middle of it, I have another picture somewhere, but the little round thing in the middle of it is this leg that you can see here. And it was green and all was good. And so what I did is I peeled that off. It came off very easily, of course, because it didn't have any adhesive on the plate, and peeled it up, started over again. And it started running fine. I went home and I was enjoying myself last evening, and I checked on the progress, and I noticed that the printing had stopped, and didn't know why. So I had to drive about 5 miles. It was I'd say 7 o'clock at night, and I drove about 5 miles here to my shop, and I looked, and the filament had stopped feeding. And so I kind of refed it in and started it printing again, and it went like one layer and it got stuck again. And the reason was, this is very interesting, these reels that you see down here at the bottom, they kind of twist together, they lock together, and this is what you put your spool on. And somehow this spool was wider than or was narrower than the filament. The filament spool was wider than fit on the spool. And I don't know, when I took this out of the package, whether it was already disconnected like this or somehow it came disconnected while I was handling it. But in any case, I couldn't get it back together. So I spent probably 45 minutes trying to twist this thing back together and put the RFID tag in. And you can see two spools here. I tried to put it on a different spool, and no matter what, I could not lock this back together. So this made this filament, it's not unusable, but I need to rewind it somehow. And I'm looking online as to methods of doing that. You really need to rewind it left to right and make it nice and even, kind of like if you were doing a long hose or something like that. So in any case, I printed the rest of it with an existing spool. So you can see here, this kind of orange spool at the top. That's how I finished the print. And I thought, well, it's just a poop chute anyway, so I don't really care what it looks like. And I did finish the print, so that was my third thing that I printed. So another question, interesting, are you doing your own CAD designs or finding things online to print? So far, the things that I've printed, the benchy was built in. So it was just already in the memory. The scraper was also built in. There's another scraper mentioned that was not built in. And then this poop chute, I actually went out and kind of browsed the internet, looked on Thingiverse, didn't find the one that I was looking for, but I found this one. And it looked very much like the ones at Automation NTH. So I went ahead and downloaded it. It was the first thing I'd actually downloaded to the printer. Used something called Bamboo Studio for that. And you take a 3D model and you slice it. So it basically creates levels and then turns that into G code. And so that was my first attempt at that. And it was quite easy to just download it and get it going. Finding things online to print. My next object I'm going to draw myself. I'm using Fusion 360 to design some legs for this conveyors that I have. I found a very inexpensive 24-volt DC conveyors to use for my trainers. So I plan on building legs for those and little mounts for photo eyes and things like that. But that's a lot of why I got this printer. I finally have a lot of little widgets that I need to print for the trainers. So speaking of which, so this is the rest of my shop that I've been remodeling a lot of things. So I still have another week and a half until the workshops start. And you can see here some of the works that I've done. All this pegboard was put on about 2-3 weeks ago. And you can see these are my trainers up at the top here on these shelves. So this is kind of what's right behind me in this webinar. I don't know if you can see my picture or not, but behind me is pegboard. And I originally thought of hanging things on pegboard. I noticed Vlad's here. Vlad always has a nice backdrop when he's doing his presentations. Sean Tierney also has a really nice backdrop. And that was the original intent. But I've been so busy getting ready for this workshop. As you can see, a lot of these rooms are kind of in progress. This is a 3-bedroom house, by the way. I bought it about 3 years ago to replace my old blown away commercial building that got hit by the tornado. So I moved a lot of, temporary shelving and things like that in here. And then recently had this pegboarded and am turning it into a little more of a commercial facility instead of just a 3-bedroom house. But you can see some of the things in here, some of these things like closets that I've kind of built shelving in and put electronic parts and things like that just for storage. The mechanical, you can see some of this Fisher technique. These are the little models that I already had, but a lot of these got blown away in the tornado. And so what you see here on the right, where I have the arrow going up to the 2 shelves, those are within the first month or two, which COVID hit, of course, right after the tornado. This is when I took apart all the models that got hit and put them into little bins, washed them. They were all mixed in with tornado debris and things like that. So I picked everything up, put it in little drawers, and you can rebuild things. But actually, Fisher technique turns out to be pretty difficult stuff to build, much more difficult than Legos. So I have not rebuilt my color sorting machine or my 9-bay warehouse. I still have pieces of it that you can see here in some of these bins on these shelves, but I haven't rebuilt those. Meanwhile, though, I do have these new conveyors. I don't know if you can see any of these in these pictures, but I have these new conveyors. They're actually vending machine conveyors. Turned out to be a very cheap way to get belt conveyors. They were from, China, like about everything is right now, but they were 24-volt DC conveyors. They run fairly slowly, but they have about a 3-inch wide belt, and they're about, I guess, 14 to 16 inches long. And so they made a very inexpensive base for little training systems. I can put photo eyes on them and turn them on and off with a PLC and that sort of thing. That's kind of a hobby of mine as much as anything else, but I want to be able to use them for some of my classes. Other things in this picture, I put a little picture of the kitchen, which I did clean up a little bit. So that's a little more organized. And you can see some of the Fisher Technique models on top of what's kind of become my little library bench here. Let's see. I'm going to read Vlad's comments here in a minute. He's got some good ideas and things. So the other thing that I wanted to mention here is I am holding this workshop, and this is because of the results of somebody asking for individual training. And this person really had seen the NTH University ads on Automation NTH's websites and started inquiring into, what can I do to get an apprenticeship there? And unfortunately, Automation NTH does not offer apprenticeships to people that have been already in industry for, 5 and 10 years and older people. They really just pull people out of colleges. So mostly MTSU, Tennessee Tech, University of Tennessee, and they offer them a 4-month training, which involves a lot of PLCs, SCADA, CAD, panel shop, basically controls engineering training. But they really, even though it's on the website as if it's, offered to other people, it's mostly only offered to either these apprentices or customers. So they have given individual training classes to some of their life sciences customers. I am the trainer for those. So I do the in-person training, and they use a lot of my curriculum out of my books and some of my videos and things like that. But they don't offer these to individual people. So this guy, and I have never met him yet, he applied to me from somewhere around Washington, D.C., and he wanted, 2 weeks of training. And I said, well, if I were doing 1-week classes or, referring you to automation training or somebody like that for in-person classes, you would get a very generic, Allen Bradley training or Siemens training, or you could go get robotics training, but I don't know of anything that is like NTH University where they mix everything up. So I kind of quickly put this presentation together to show, that when we learn, right, when we get our training, we start out in high school, things like that. We get our reading, mathematics, writing, and maybe take some physics and chemistry and things like that in high school. And then as we move into college, some of the first things we learn in electrical engineering, or a lot of different engineering, is like basic physics, statics, dynamics, electricity and electronics, maybe get into some digital and analog. If we're unlucky enough to take a PLC class in college, we may get some of that in our electrical engineering training, but it's usually not very good, right? It's very, very basic. And a lot of times the professors are not experienced in that. So I kind of made this to present that it's not just all about PLC training, even though that's a big part of what I do. There are a lot of other things that you need to know. So for instance, before you get into PLCs, you really need to know a lot of these numbering systems. You need to know BCD and binary and hex and lots of other things. You need to know lots of other controls techniques, things about sensors, communications, RS 232, 485 protocols. You need to know more about Ethernet. Fluid power is a big part of it. Motors, not only basic motors like VFDs, but motion control also. And I kind of put these in hierarchy, some of the basic things that you needed to know before moving on to the next level. I put machine safety up here and general coding. because those apply to things like microprocessors, right? Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, things like that. Move into PLCs, DCS systems, which is something this guy asked for. And I don't have a DCS. I can't afford a DCS, and I probably wouldn't buy one even if I could. I also don't have a robot, but they're very important to learn, right? If you're moving into industrial automation. I don't know what this guy's background is. I think he's an electrical engineer. He's probably worked in industry, and my guess is worked for the government. So he's in the DC area. But his complaint was, he said he's not able to get a good job because everybody's asking for PLC experience, even though he's an engineer. And so he wanted general overall training. And I said, well, we can use what I have. And he signed up for 2 weeks. So I immediately went out and had to try to recruit some other people. And I have a couple people coming up from Miami, from my big customer down there that I do a lot of work for. And he's sending some people that need English training as much as anything. They already know a little bit about PLCs and certainly their plant. And we will be digging into lots of different topics like you see on this list here. And so this is the ad that I put together for it. It is starting on January 8th. It's going to go 5 days a week. Basically the 8th through the 12th, and then the 15th through the 19th. And 8 a.m. to 4:30, 5 o'clock, something like that. And anybody can pretty much show up and sign up for this thing. 1 day to all 10 days, 5 days, and we would work on whatever is the topic of the day. Probably a lot of it is going to be basic PLC training to start out with, probably Allen Bradley and Siemens, and then we may move into some other things, and that's the way this is going to be set up. So New Year's resolutions. And I want to look here real quick at Vlad made a couple comments. See, trying to figure out an upgrade to my wall, but I need a bigger space first. I have quite a bit of space behind me, but I'm not really sure how to organize everything. I think one of the first things I need to do is get some new cameras and set it up to where the camera's a little farther away from where I sit. Not sure if anybody can see my face on this webinar. Let's see. I can see a couple people are logged in here. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Vlad. So yeah, I guess you can see the wall behind me, and you can see part of the pegboard. And I have a lot of these trainers sitting up here. I flip back where you can see those kind of pegboard. That's what it looks like. So I've got lots of pegboard, but then I built this shelf across so that I could set things up for the trainers and things behind me. But the jury's still out. It's not a super important thing that I do, but as you said, Vlad, what Sean and I use as pegboards, take a look at wall control. Well, this thing's already mounted on the wall. So I'm stuck with the shelf and the pegboard itself, but I do plan on making, especially for my workshop, some hanging boards where you can basically mount PLCs on the boards, maybe pneumatics, things like that, and be able to do things on the wall or on that workbench that I showed. So those are all plans for the new year. We'll be modifying that that workshop and that sort of thing. But we'll see. I'm like kind of OCD, or not OCD, ADHD. That's it. I tend to work on too many things at one time. I think that's something we're all guilty of. So maybe that's one of my New Year's resolutions, if you wanted to say that. Other than that, improve marketing. Vlad's here. Vlad's good at marketing. He has some help with that. I also may end up having some help from a nice young lady from Europe, just like Vlad has somebody in Europe. She's actually in Amsterdam, somebody that's active on LinkedIn. More of these Mastering the Machine workshops. I will probably do these at least every 2 months. It is actually economical for me to only teach even as few as one person at a time. So somehow I can pull that off, and I'll probably hold these even if only one person shows up. And we can do things like I said, work on these trainers, 3D printing, pneumatics, Do have a kind of a servo setup in plans, but I don't have everything assembled yet. Other plans, learn more 3D modeling. I am working on Fusion 360. I'm very late to the game. I'm an old guy, very good at 2D CAD, but never picked up on 3D CAD. I had a mentor that used SolidWorks extensively in the 90s, and he had nothing but trouble with it. It was in its infancy back then. It was before, I think, AutoCAD Inventor came out. It was mostly the big 3D modeling platform at the time, and it caused all kinds of problems for him and his employees. And so I never got into it. And anyway, in controls engineering, you need much less of 3D modeling software. So I tried it one time. I have Inventor, but really never got into it. But now Fusion 360, I've practiced a little bit with it and gotten to where I can at least create simple objects and put holes in them and things like that for my trainers. Plan on more microprocessor and electronics videos. I have a bunch of Arduino, Raspberry Pi, and PICs and microcontrollers and lots of individual electronics widgets, so I can build all kinds of things. I just need to film it. More pneumatics videos. I am actually being hosted by Automation NTH to create those, and I have picked up a bunch of cylinders and air treatment devices, and I will be creating more pneumatic stuff, building more of these conveyor trainers. I hope to attend more trade shows and do more networking next year. I did none last year. I did not attend any trade shows, and I missed a lot of the folks that are traveling around, like Vlad here. I think Alicia Gilpin, Ali G was there. Some of the folks. So I missed a lot of that. Don't want to miss them again. These multi-platform PLC videos. I wrote a book called PLC Hardware and Programming Multi-Platform back in about 2016. And it kind of evolved into my advanced PLC book on Allen Bradley and Siemens, but I left behind a lot of the multi-platform features of it. And one of the things I realized when I bought a Automation Direct Productivity 2000 is that it really makes a very good generic tag-based PLC training system. The good thing about it is the software is free. It has a simulator built into it, and the hardware is pretty inexpensive too, unlike Allen Bradley. So I really have a hard time sometimes with the Allen Bradley and Siemens videos that I make. People ask, well, where can I get a copy of the software? And there just isn't much of a good, inexpensive solution for that. I know that Siemens, I think you can install the software and it'll interrupt you every 2 hours and make you restart it maybe until you get your license. Allen Bradley eventually just shuts down. It won't let you cheat the software for very long. You can reset your clock and things like that, but neither of those platforms are very good free PLC practice platforms. So Automation Direct, the Click is another one that I'll probably make some free videos for the multi-platform book. And let's see, productivity, the Click, and probably Omron. I may use Omron for that as my tag or non-tag based system. It has a very good register based platform. And again, I know where you can get a free software version of that. If you go to PLC4Me, the number 4ME, you can get a download of the Omron software, and it runs for free. You type in their name as a license. I'm not sure if that's a legit way to do it or not, but it's been out there for probably 15 years, and Omron hasn't jumped on them. So that's a good resource if you want to download some software and play with it. Another advantage of the Omron software is that the HMI software runs with it. So the HMI software connects to the virtual PLC, and you can have an HMI with some buttons, and you can use it to toggle bits and things like that. Code Assist, yes, good thing, Kevin, that you brought this up. I do a bunch of Beckhoff, and I really like Beckhoff. Unfortunately, I will say I would never start with Beckhoff, and I don't think I would start with Code Assist either if I were a rookie, right? If I were a basic maintenance guy and I wanted to just get into it, a couple problems with it. First off, ladder is probably not its main main platform out of the 5 IEC 61131 languages. But in the US, you must know ladder. We have probably 70% of our installations are Allen Bradley. And I know there's lots of arguments about using structured text, but around here, if you're in a plant, you are going to be using ladder logic. So you need to have a good ladder editor, and the CodeAssist and the Beckhoff editor, that would not be my first choice for ladder editing. I would definitely pick Allen Bradley or Siemens ladder editors long before I would try to use the Beckhoff or the CodeAssist one. It's just really harder to deal with, and it's very object oriented. I think people need to learn object oriented programming. I think it's very important, and program organization, things like that. But that's not what I would call basic PLC programming. So I would recommend, if people are getting into learning PLCs, they start out with something simple, probably ladder logic in the United States. And if they want to learn, what's used in plants, just learn, troubleshooting and cross-referencing and things like that, and some kind of graphical language, rather than jumping straight into structured text and organization and function blocks. Those are all really important things. And I love Beckhoff. I use it quite a bit lately. I've done about 2 years of it, and a lot of writing on it and things like that. Hopefully about to put out a book on it. And CodeAssist is very similar. Beckhoff came from CodeAssist originally. So very similar platforms, but like I said, I don't think I would recommend that as your first platform. And Kevin mentions, started with CodeAssist. Oh boy, I suffered. Yes. The other thing is, in the US, people don't understand that. I think the ladder logic in Allen Bradley is very powerful. You can build extremely robust and complicated, and as complicated as you want programs. Automation NTH, who I do a lot of work for, writes massive life sciences servo control programs using Allen Bradley in entirely, I'm not going to say entirely ladder. There is a little bit of structured text, but it's pretty rare that they do structured text. One of the other downsides to structured text in the US is that you have to buy a license for it. It does not come with the basic Allen Bradley, RS Logix 5000 or 5000 Studio software. So if you wanted to get in on the low end of the software, the basic Compact Logix, mini edition or something like that, you're not going to have structured text. You won't have the editor. You won't be able to practice the code. You wouldn't be able to simulate it. So as I mentioned before, Allen Bradley software is very expensive anyway. And then it's complicated by the fact that to get the full-blown package with the structured text and SFC, sequential function charts, function block diagram, things like that, you're going to pay a lot of money. So CodeAssist, great platform. Beckhoff, great platform. But again, I wouldn't start from scratch with that. And yeah, I suffered. Well, I did too. I was lucky. I was being paid to learn Beckhoff and create some videos for it. And then I taught about 5 or 6 classes on it. And my method of practicing is to create simulations. I've always done that now in Bradley and Siemens. I create simulated machines and create a simulation program that feeds back into the main routines and allows it to operate with graphics as if it were a real machine. I taught one of these classes about 2 weeks ago in NTH. It worked out very well. At this point, I have, dial tables and pick and places and things all moving on the screen, and I can introduce parts and do part tracking and big UDTs and, arrays of UDTs for part tracking and things like that. So that's a big focus that I use when I'm teaching my more advanced classes. I still do teach for automation training. I teach basic classes for them. But as I mentioned earlier, these basic classes are going to teach you timers and counters and math and comparison instructions and bit logic, things like that. It's a good start, but jumping, I feel sorry for anybody, Kevin, as you mentioned, jumping straight into something like CodeAssist. I hope that wasn't your first platform. I do have the book of Code Assist by Gary Pratt. I've actually met Gary. He lives down in Florida, and before he wrote his book, we got together down there in the villages and had dinner and kind of got to talk about writing books and things. I'd already published several books by that time, and he was getting into that. And his book, though, is about coming up on $300. I want to say $250. It's a good book, but it's kind of like one of those big tomes. It's a big, thick book, hardcover, very, very solid and very probably college level book. And I just don't know that there is an easy way to teach things like Code Assist, as probably not an easy platform to start with. I hope that's not what you started. Oh, Kevin said it was my first. I had no option because of cost. Yes. Well, there are options. Like I said, Home Run and Automation Direct. I'm impressed with the productivity platform. It is tag based, and it has all kinds of little USB ports and things like that on it. It has MQTT built into it, and the software runs, and it's free. You can just download it and run it. But again, hardware is an issue. And so if you're getting into Code Assist is on a lot of platforms. I know Wago and I think Phoenix Contacts, the PLC Next is sort of Code Assist-ish, if you want to say that. Let's see. The other thing, yes, work more on the Automation Academy. I have that down here. And hopefully, part of that is if I advertise it better and more people join, it will give me more incentive to spend time on working on it. So those are kind of they're not really New Year's resolutions, because as soon as you call it a resolution, then you end up breaking it and doing 2 or 3 months of it and then stop working on it. So they're just things that I'm going to be working on this year. The next webinar will be January 20th. I'll probably have just results from this big workshop that I'm doing and be talking about that. So training in general, have another class for automation training at the end of January, headed to Oklahoma City. Driving, I hope that the weather is good. Driving from Nashville to Oklahoma City can be chancy in the wintertime. But anyway, that's kind of my plans for next year. So January 20th will be right after that workshop ends. Again, let me flap back to that. There is still room for probably 1 to 2 more people for most of the days. I have 3 solid people for all 10 days of it. And that is, like I said, those 2 weeks. We'll be covering lots and lots of different topics, machine vision. I don't have any robots here. Don't have any servos yet. I do have an intelligent actuator servo that I may try to move up, and we'll be covering lots of these different topics and things like that. But like I said, mostly PLCs, HMIs, programming, that sort of thing. Maybe some Beckhoff. I think we're going to start out with Alan Bradley, and then if this customer really wants to move into something like a Beckhoff platform or a Code Assist platform, we may do that the second week. But I know, for instance, the guys coming up from Miami don't have any Beckhoff there. They're all Alan Bradley, Siemens, GE, and I think that's it. I think they have one Schneider PLC, but everything else is lots of Alan Bradley, old and new Alan Bradley, and Siemens, old and new Siemens, TI Portal, Step 7. So that's what we'll probably be concentrating on somewhat. But anyway, that's mostly it for today. And thanks, folks, for showing up. And we'll see you next time.